Yung Macolod Corridor is actually a 30 by 60 kilometers of an extensive zone of volcanism. At itong Macolod Corridor ay hosts to two active volcanoes. So again, we have the Taal volcano and in Mount Banahaw. Several potentially active volcanoes. We also have Mount Makiling, which is we're really familiar of kasi ito yung may pinakamalapit sa may Metro Manila. And we also have over 200 monogenetic centers. So yung thickness ng crust mismo sa Macolod Corridor based sa geophysical data mo ay nasa mga 32 kilometers. And then yung estimate namin based sa data namin, itong mga primitive magmas ay nasa 36 to 42 kilometers deeper pa.
Sa tuwing nagbabasa kayo ng mga research papers, nagtataka din ba kayo kung paano ito naisipan gawin ng mga researchers? Paano nila na-transform ang idea nila para maging isang actual na research project? Saan sila kumuha ng funding para magawa to? Paano nila nalaman na ang results nila ay pwede na nilang ipasa for publication? Dito, sa Behind the Science podcast, ay kakausapin natin ang ating mga Pinoy scientists para ibahagi hindi lang ang mga resulta ng kanilang pag-aaral, kundi pati na rin ang mga behind the scenes or behind the science stories nito. Simula sa kung paano nila ito naisipan gawin hanggang sa na-publish na nila ito. So this podcast is in partnership with the UP Resilience Institute, the Philippine Agricultural Scientist, the Philippine Journal of Fisheries, and SciEngJ. So ang UP Resilience Institute ay long-time partners na namin dito sa podcast. Nung nagsisimula pa lang kami, nandyan na sila para tumulong sa amin. At para lang sa kaalaman ng lahat, ako ngayon ay isang UPRI Research Fellow. The Philippine Agricultural Scientist is the first international journal in the Philippines and Southeast Asia in the field of agriculture. It is published by the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, College of Agriculture and Food Science. It publishes articles in the fields of tropical agricultural science and related areas including environmental science, food science, engineering, biotechnology, economics, rural sociology, development communication, agroforestry and silviculture, and marine and fishery science. The Philippine Journal of Fisheries is the official publication of the Department of Agriculture, National Fisheries Research and Development Institute. It covers all aspects of fisheries, both in basic and applied sciences, as well as related fields of studies such as capture fisheries, aquaculture, post-harvest technology, marketing and industry, ecology, oceanography, conservation, biotechnology, food safety, socioeconomics, and systematics in freshwater, estuarine, marine, and other identifiable water habitats. SciEngJ, formerly known as the Philippine Science Letters, is the official journal of the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering. It covers studies in the natural, physical, mathematical, computational, and social sciences, including those related to agriculture, health, engineering, environment, education, and technology. So kung may paper kayong gustong i-publish at pasok ito sa scope ng mga journals na ito, please consider submitting to one of them. At syempre, importante, take note na hindi kayo pwede mag-submit ng sabay-sabay sa tatlong journals na ito. Kasi bawal yon. Dapat sa isang journal muna kayo mag-submit. At ang mga journals na to ay index na rin sa Web of Science, Scopus, ASEAN Citation Index, and sa Imago Journal Ranking. Kaya masisiguro nyo dito ang mataas na standard at mabusisi na review process para masiguro ang high quality papers na pinapublish. So if you're interested in publishing your research in one of these journals, check nyo ang guidelines at ang links ay nasa description.
Magandang araw mga kapwa-scientista at welcome sa isa na namang episode ng Behind the Science podcast. Our guest is a licensed geologist and early career chemical volcanologist currently pursuing his PhD in Earth Sciences at the University of Hong Kong. His work focuses on magma storage systems and eruption dynamics across Southeast Asia, including volcanoes in the Philippines, Indonesia, and China. He previously earned his master's in geology from UP Diliman and a bachelor's in geology from Negros Oriental State University. He also ranked number 4 in the geologist licensure exam. So without further ado, let's all welcome Mr. John Michael Ausejo.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Thank you sa generous introduction.
Ayun. So ang pag-usapan natin ngayon, ito yung naging master's thesis ni Mike at tungkol ito sa magma or kung saan galing yung magma dun sa Macolod Corridor. And as usual, bago natin yun puntahan, kilalanin muna natin si Mike and I'm sure na ma-inspire kayo sa story niya. So,
Sana.
ayun. Ay, by the way, nagkakilala kami ni Mike, I think 1 or 2 years ago nung pumunta siya dito sa Japan for the Sakura Science program. Last year ba yan?
Last
Year.
March.
Ayan.
Na
So,
yun siya.
yung Sakura Science program, basically, yun din yung naging way for me na mag-pursue ng PhD ko sa Japan. Kasi yung program na yon nag-invite yung mga researchers based dito sa Japan, nag-invite sila ng students or mga faculty abroad para pumunta dun sa institution nila. Kasama ni Mike yung yung former professors ko din, sina Ma'am Carla and Sir Leo, at saka yung mga labmates nila. First question pala namin dito palagi, Mike. Kailan mo na-realize na gusto mo maging isang scientist?
Nice question. Actually, siguro nung pagkabata ako, gusto ko na maging scientist. Pero para kasi siyang, parang vague pa na aspiration. Kasi syempre, bata ka pa. I want to be a scientist. When I grow up, I want to be a scientist. I want to be something like that. So, hindi mo pa siya tinitake seriously. So, along the way, madaming mga conflict of interest kang may experience. But then, I think, when I started to join a science quiz bee in grade 4, that's when I realized na gusto kong i-pursue yung science. Pero I'm not really sure yet kung anong type or discipline sa science yung gusto kong i-pursue. But during that time, I know na gusto ko na talaga yung science rather than anything else. So yeah, it was during my elementary years.
As you mentioned before sa sa balita, sa GMA, sa Rappler, as well as dun sa Pinoy Scientist na page, very ano ba yung tamang term? Very challenging, very winding yung road mo during the college years. Kasi 10 years, di ba?
10 years.
Almost
10
10 years.
Isang dekada. Grabe. Parang ano na yun, combined undergrad, master's, saka PhD na yung ginawa ko dapat supposedly dun sa 10 years. Pero yeah, it's a long and winding journey. It's also daming ups and downs. But at the same time, I'm really fulfilled and really fulfilling yung feeling and also the experience that you get along the way, the people that you also meet along the way. Ang dami. And parang ano siya, hindi mo akalain na yun na pala yun, 10 years na pala yung yung na-survive mo sa college mo. And because of that 1 decade college experience, siguro I wouldn't be here today. Yeah, I don't know kung saan ako ngayon.
Grabe nga kasi 10 years in college, nag-top 4 sa board exam, ngayon nagpi-PhD na. So, pwede mo bang ikwento sa amin ano yung nangyari during that 10 years?
Bilis eh. Well, to be honest, I wasn't that really serious about getting my degree in college. Well, I started as a civil engineering student in one of the universities dun sa Southern Mindanao. And then, of course, hindi ko gusto yung engineering kasi ang daming math. Hindi ako magaling sa math. So I transferred to Dumaguete City, specifically dun sa Negros Oriental State University. And then that's when I realized na, magaling pala, may geology program pala. Although I know for a fact na may geology program na din sa previous na university na pinag-aralan ko ng civil engineer. Pero Dumaguete kasi, it's also holds a special place in my heart kasi that's where I was born, in Dumaguete City. So, technically, gusto ko rin siyang explore yung area at the same time while pursuing my degree there. Pero the road towards that goal was never like really simple road. So, ayan. Madaming beses din akong nag-shift kasi yun nga, madaming conflict of interest nga akong na-experience na pag kumbaga parang hindi ko lang siya parang naka-cage lang ako dati. So, hindi ako makawala kung kung saan ako pwedeng pumunta or ano ba talaga yung perfect fit or journey or degree na para sa akin. So, it took me a while to gauge and also to explore. And apparently, in 2017, I ended up in the geology program. So, yung mga previous subjects ko, na-credit siya. So, that's why naging 3 years na lang yung pag-complete ko ng program instead of 4 years. So, ayun, tuloy-tuloy na. So, during 2017, that time, I managed to recollect myself and to redeem myself talaga. Kasi, syempre, ang dami ko nang naubos na taon na effort ng family, of course, and those people who were supporting me behind. And, ayun, I managed to study some topics or major subjects in 1 semester in advance. And then, binabasa-basa ko lang siya ulit hanggang sa nai-embody mo na siya or nai-internalize mo na yung basic concepts. So, naging madali na lang siya sa akin moving forward dun sa pagkuha ng degree. So, when I was also in the college, in my college, I think 2018, I was also hired as a teaching assistant. So, student pa ako nung time na yun. But since we actually lack instructors and also professors in our department, so wala ibang tumutulong doon. So, the department asked me to help somehow. So, in the form of doing part-time teaching. But this was actually unpaid. So, it was really like a volunteer type of cause because we felt the need of having somebody to guide us because of that limited resources and limited manpower. So nagtutulong-tulungan lang kami ng batchmates namin, and also my classmates. And then, yeah, along the way, we hurdled the challenge. And then that also gained me some important experience about being a teacher. Putting yourself in that aspect so that you'd be able to know kung ano rin yung na-experience ng mga teachers sa classroom. So yeah, I was able to experience best of the both worlds, being a student and being also a teaching assistant at that time. And then, I think that was when graduate ako 2020, before pandemic hit, or I think that during pandemic, in March 2020, di ba pandemic na talaga yun, yung time na yun. So, graduate ako noon. I never had a formal graduation right kasi syempre online lang. But still nung bumalik na yung nagka-new normal na after the pandemic was lifted and the lockdown was lifted, still wala pa rin akong chance to graduate formally. But that one
talaga? Kahit
Never.
Kahit nung MS?
Nung MS, yes. Gumraduate ako. Nasa kami doon. Anong theater ba? Nakalimutan ko. Basta doon sa may oval na theater. Gumraduate ako noon. Pero nung college talaga, I never had like a formal graduation, right? So, but yeah, I also understand because pandemic nga talaga naman siya. And in between those years na nire-recollect yung sarili ko and tinatry kong nire-rebuild yung reputation ko sa family ko because also, you need to like really really help yourself kung paano bumawi sa mga taong tumulong sa'yo. So, in between those years, I was also able to present my research. So, in 2018, yun yung first time na nag-undergo ako or nag-fieldwork kami sa Bohol. And then yung initial findings namin, pinesent namin siya sa annual geological conference. So, yun yung first time na experience ko. So, basically, nakangapa pa nung time na yun kasi di pa ako familiar sa research talaga. But then, as years go by, like every year na akong sumasali sa GeoCon. Develop na yung sense of awareness kung paano mag-present, kung paano i-improve yung research, kung paano mag-overcome ng objectives or yung questions from the people. And yeah, it's a worthwhile experience though. 10 years is like, I think 2 weeks ago. Lang yung experience. It's really worthwhile. Pero Paul, ito yung hindi alam ng tao kasi. So sa 10 years na yun, parang naka-timeline na kasi yung mindset ko. So okay, at this type of age, or at this age, gusto kong i-pursue na to. Gusto kong gumraduate ng college na talaga this time. And then after that, gusto kong i-pursue yung MS at this specific time. Then graduate at this specific year. Then ipupursu ko naman yung PhD. And then postdoc or maybe professors, who knows. So ganun siya. Parang pinaplano ko na siya. Nagsiset na ako ng goals kasi, you know, I mean, when there's an opportunity for me to learn, then why not? I mean, kahit sinasabi ng mga tao na, hindi ka ba napapagod na mag-aral? No, it's not. Hindi siya nakakapagod. You know, yung rewarding experience nun is that people actually people usually what do you call it, appreciate what you're doing, you know, hindi lang siya science in the end, kundi may parang taste din siya sa mga tao sa community natin. Parang yun yung fulfilling.
Ngayon, yung specialization mo is chemical volcanology. So anong ibig sabihin nun?
Para lang tayo ng chemistry ng Earth's interior, parang yun lang. So kung may physical aspect tayo ng volcanology, which is yung paano aralin yung mga volcanic processes, yung mga volcanic landforms, mga ganon. Sa chemical volcanology naman, dun tayo sa may pinaka-interior mismo. So yung mga hindi nakikita natin sa surface, anything, yung magma, yung paano nabubuo yung mga magma. So, inaalam namin kung bakit may ganon, kailan naging may ganon, at ano yung implication niya pag nag-i-erupt yung mga vulkan. So, yun. Nagustuhan ko siya kasi underrepresented yung chemical aspect ng volcanology sa Philippines. And maybe sa worldwide rin siya. So usually mas madami nagfo-focus tayo dun sa mga on-ground, sa mga in situ na data or yung mga on-ground na mga aspect, which is actually very helpful. But of course, at some point, importante rin tingnan kung ano yung nakapaloob, ano yung nandun mismo sa ilalim, at paano natin siya i-correlate dun sa mga ground signals. So you know, which I think is very also important kung nagko-coincide ba yung mga data natin o hindi. And then at some point, we'll try to make a story, and by making this story, we also try to relate to the public kung ano yung nakikita natin, and you know, how can we also prepare the community in terms of disasters. So, yun yung importance, yung aspect. Kahit magkaiba yung field na yun, kahit medyo may distinct contrast yung field na yun, at the same time, yung goal is very, we only have one common goal.
Ayan, so since nabigyan natin ng konting overview ni Mike kung ano yung chemical volcanology, discussion natin yung naging master's thesis niya, and later on siguro pwede niya tayong pahapyawan nung PhD research na ginagawa niya ngayon. So, yung title ng paper niya is Melt Generation and Magma Storage Conditions of Primitive Arc Lavas in the Macolod Corridor, Southwestern Luzon Arc, Philippines. So, Mike, can you give us a very brief overview or a bird's eye view kung tungkol saan ba itong study na to?
So yung inaral namin is paano na-form yung specific magma, which is what we call primitive magma. So may iba-ibang klase tayong magma na nabubuo pag undergo sila ng partial melting. So yung pinakauna doon ay yung mga pristine yung composition ng magma na basalt. So, yung mataas na mga iron, magnesium na magma, ito yung una na bubuo. Pero gusto naming malaman kung paano nabuo yung primitive magma sa Macolod Corridor specifically. Kasi yung preservation niya sa setting natin, like the Philippines, is very rare. Kasi yun nga, kailangan specialized at saka tectonic-wise or tectonically dependent yung pagbuo mismo ng primitive magma. So, nakikita lang siya most likely sa mga small eruptive centers like scoria cones, tuff rings, mga ardaya-trims. And the reason why, bakit siya importante kasi, bakit importante din yung pag-aaral ng primitive magma dun sa area, dito sa may southwestern Luzon Arc kasi may dalawang active volcanoes tayo ngayon. One of these two is yung Taal volcano. At tinatry namin i-relate kung anong connection ng previous eruption ng mga maliliit na bulkan na to dun sa pag-form ng Taal mismo. At bakit siya consistently nag-erupt until these days. So, yun.
Ayun, so medyo madami tayong i-unpack na mga terminologies doon, no? Pero siguro bago natin yun i-discuss, bigyan mo muna kami ng idea. Saan ba itong Macolod Corridor?
Okay, good question. Yung Macolod Corridor ay makikita natin siya sa may southwestern part ng Luzon Arc. So, may entire stretch tayo ng Luzon Arc. So, nahahati yung Luzon Arc sa 5 segments. So, itong sa coastal range sa Taiwan, dito sa may Batanes, Babuyan segment, sa may Babuyan group of islands. Meron naman tayo dito sa may northern Luzon. Meron tayong Bataan segment, yung pang-4 at pang-5 yung Mindoro segment. Yung Macolod Corridor ay part dito sa pang-4, which is yung Bataan segment. So it runs over from the Zambales mountain range. Tatamaan niya yung Mount Pinatubo, dito sa may Mount Mariveles, hanggang dito sa may papunta sa Taal or before dun sa Taal. Yung Macolod Corridor is actually, based sa mga pag-aaral, is a 30 by 60 kilometers of wide or an extensive zone of rift volcanism. So, madami mga normal faults dyan kasi may sinasabi sila, may mga geophysical studies na nagsasabi na may extension na nangyayari dyan sa area na yan, which is also apparent naman sa mga data nila. At itong Macolod Corridor ay hosts to 2 active volcanoes. So again, we have the Taal volcano and then Mount Banahaw. Several potentially active volcanoes. We also have Mount Makiling, which is we're really familiar of kasi ito yung may pinakamalapit sa may Metro Manila. And we also have over 200 monogenetic centers. So itong monogenetic centers na to, 10 of these, ito yung inaral ko dun sa masters ko dun sa UP Diliman. So, ayan. Ano siya, at the same time, yung Macolod Corridor din kasi ay parang well surrounded by highly urbanized areas. So medyo we're talking about hundreds of thousands to millions of people, living nearby or within the Macolod corridor itself. So yeah.
Yung term na corridor, hindi talaga siya geological na term, di ba? Parang gawa-gawa lang gawa-gawa lang siya.
As far as I know, hindi talaga. Wala. Parang corridor lang siya na siguro nakabakod. Doon lang siya na area. Parang ganun lang siguro. Pero as far as I know, Macolod Corridor talaga tinawag nila dyan. Ever since nag-propose yung mga early studies, like sila Forster and others in 1989, sila De Boer and others in 1980, yan sila. Sila yung mga seminal mga scientists na nag-propose ng Macolod Corridor, yung northeast-southwest na trending extensive zone. So, yeah. Hindi siya geologic, I think.
Nabanggit mo kanina yung term na rift volcanism.
Yeah.
So, can you explain anong ibig sabihin ng rift volcanism?
So, yung rift volcanism, ito yung volcanism na tumatama mismo, dumadaan mismo sa mga extensional areas. Kumbaga, nag-rifting yung mga lupa. So, it's like moving away from each other. So, yan yung tinatawag na rift volcanism. Usually, mas common to sa mga continental areas kasi yung rift volcanism, mas kailangan nila ng mas robust na supply ng magma para move away yung mga yung plates or yung crust mismo, kung yung crust. So dito sa Makulod Corridor, extensional setting siya. So analog siya mismo ng parang rifting din. Pero itong mga monogenetic centers na to ay parang at some point they actually emerged along these extensional zones. So kumbaga itong extensional zones na to, yung mga fractures o yung mga faults na yan yung nagsiserve na pathway ng mga magmas galing sa ilalim. So at kung may ganong klaseng favorable condition, chances are yung magma mas easily to escape all the way to the surface and then forms volcanism. But hindi siya technically na rifting na volcanism na kagaya sa Africa na nangyayari ngayon. Kasi iba naman talaga. It's a different type of story. But here in Island Arc, like in the Philippines, we're talking about volcanism na nangyayari lang sa extension, but not necessarily na robust or voluminous yung magma na in-erupt. But mga discrete patches lang siya from small eruptive centers. Yan. Nangyari ng time na yun.
Yung ibig sabihin nun, yung rift volcanism, hindi siya yung kasi typically pag during mga high school na earth science class, 'di ba, yung dinidiscuss, meron kang magma na umaakyat kasi meron kang subduction. Yung pag-subduct na yun yung nag-i-induce ng melting tapos nagkakaroon ka ng magma na umaakyat. Yung rift volcanism, hindi siya ganun.
Depende. Kasi kung kunyari, kung may mga rifting kasi, mga localized rifting, like kagaya sa Makulod Corridor, I think meron din sa New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken, sa may bandang yan. Yung mga localized na mga rifting na yan ay also because dun sa mga magma na nag-upwell dun sa ilalim. So, syempre, sa island arc setting, kumbaga, kagaya sa Philippines, may nagsasubduct tayo na plate. And then at some point, siguro, since depende siguro sa morphology ng slab, yung direction ng flow ng magma ay nag-i-induce ng convective motion. So yung direction ng convection na yon would also induce dun sa rifting. Depende din siya, of course, kung gaano ka unique yung setting, kung gaano kakapal yung crust. Madaming parameters yung kino-consider pag ganun. Yung iba naman na rifting, for example, like continental rifting, kagaya sa Africa ngayon, for example, parang yung source lang is technically stagnant sa ilalim without influence dun sa subducting slab. Kasi, syempre, continental sila. So, without, at saka medyo malayo sila dun sa may convergent boundary. So, yung nag-i-induce lang o nagsusupply lang ng heat is coming from the deepest portion siguro ng melt source, kung saan man yun. And then, that favors the formation of rifting, which is quite really different dito sa Philippines kasi medyo localized lang siya. So, syempre, yung source ng mga magma sa Philippines ay subduction pa rin. So, depende lang siya on a case-to-case basis and also on a tectonic setting. Well, sa Philippines kasi, almost everything can happen kasi medyo complex yung tectonics ng Philippines. So, yeah.
Kanina, nabanggit mo yung term na primitive lava na siya yung fresh na
Yeah.
pagtunaw ng bato. Tama ba?
Yeah, tama.
So, halimbawa ba nito yung kasi madaming mga video sa internet, yung mga volcanologist na sinasample nila yung lumalabas na lava sa bulkan tapos hinuhulog sa timba na may tubig. Ganun ba yun? Ganun bang ibig sabihin nun?
Yung primitive na composition kasi, dinidictate siya mismo kung anong mga minerals na yung nakapaloob dun sa magma, for example. So, may tinatawag tayo ng mga, so basically sa geology, we have Bowen's reaction series, okay? So at specific time, at specific temperature and pressure, may certain minerals na tayo nabubuo doon sa condition na yun. In the case of primitive magma, since sila yung pinaka-pristine, it means na andun pa yung mga matataas na iron tsaka magnesium. And also, matataas na yung mga calcium na mga crystals. So, ito yung makikita or nare-record mismo sa mga olivines at saka sa clinopyroxenes. So, kung gaano kadami yung olivines at clinopyroxenes mo dun sa whole rock, let's say, for example, kung gaano kataas or gaano kadami yung iron at magnesium na crystals mo, that will also dictate kung gaano kataas yung ratio ng iron at magnesium mo dun sa melt mismo. So, yun. Yung sa primitive magma, special siya kasi hindi siya nag-undergo technically ng extensive evolution. So, kumbaga sa mga violent na eruptions, for example, like Pinatubo. It's a dacitic dacite yung composition ng Pinatubo. It means na bago naging dacite yung composition niya, dumaan pa siya sa unang melt na na-produce during partial melting, which is yung basaltic. And then, nag-evolve siya to a different type of melt by, different processes. So, iba-ibang process yung na-encounter ng magma. Nakakabuo siya ng different melt composition. At the same time, nag-iiba-iba yung crystals na nakikita natin doon. So, ayun. So, pag primitive, dun sa nakikita nating video online siguro pag Iceland tsaka Hawaii, yes, kasi medyo primitive yung composition doon kasi hotspot region or divergent, so hindi na modify chemically yung composition ng magma. So yeah, pag nagsasample sila, usually pag nakikita natin na may nagsasample na doon sa mga lava or sa mga basaltic lava flows na actively nagta-travel downslope, it means na nagka-conduct din sila ng mga experimental studies. And at the same time, tinatry nilang nire-relate yun or kina-correlate yun sa mga naturally formed na mga rocks. So, kumbaga, kung hindi rin siya parang wala tayong ganun sa Philippines kasi wala tayong active na basaltic lava flows na nangyayari. Sa case kasi natin parang through degassing yung nangyayari, mga ganun, or pyroclastic density flows. Pero yan, to answer your question, depende din siya sa ang setting. Kung medyo itim-itim siya, well, most likely, mas mataas yung chance na makakuha ka ng primitive magma. Pero pag medyo yung kulay ng magma o yung lava mismo sa surface ay hindi na siya ganun masyadong dark, it means na baka nag-evolve na siya at saka hindi na pristine na yung composition.
So yung color pala nung bato in a way pwede not always pwede siya mag-indicate kung primitive lava yung hinahawakan mo or not.
Exactly. Parang marker siya. So kumbaga pag nag-ID ka ng bato, pag maitim siya at medyo heavy, it means mafic or basaltic probably yung composition kasi kung iron or magnesium lang naman, syempre mga dense mineral elements to sila. Kung lighter siya, most likely intermediate or medyo silicic yung composition. So, mas mataas na yun dito yung mga aluminum, potassium, sodium, silica relative dun sa iron tsaka magnesium. So, tsaka medyo lighter na rin sila in terms of weight, not just in color. So, dun natin siya mas nag-gauge kung anong klaseng bato yung nakikita natin.
Tapos para masabi mo talaga siya na primitive, kailangan na ng laboratory analysis na yon. Ganun ba yan?
At saka kung may experience ka na din talaga kung paano mag-identify ng mga crystals sa field. Like, pag nakita mo maitim siya at madaming olivines or CPX, highly likely na primitive yung bato nakikita mo. But, again, hindi lahat ng bulkan sa Pilipinas, for example, ay nakakapag-produce o nakakapag-erupt ng primitive magma. So, nagdedepende pa rin siya sa anong klaseng bulkan yung pinuntahan nyo.
paano ka pala napunta sa ganitong research, yung pag-aaral ng primitive magma dun sa Bacolod Corridor? Anong backstory nito?
Good question. Actually, yung co-supervisor ko, which is si Dr. Americus Perez, who is actually a fellow sa PNRI, DOST PNRI ngayon sa Quezon City. Siya yung nag-suggest dito na aralin yung primitive magma sa Bacolod Corridor. As far as I know, parang undergrad siya na exercise sa UP. Tapos sineryoso namin, ginawa namin siyang thesis para mas ma-broaden yung idea namin kung bakit may ganitong specifically na nakikita sa isang lugar.
Undergrad na exercise? Parang wala akong natatandaan na ganun na, or hindi lang ako nakikinig sa klase.
I think undergrad na exercise to. Undergrad na exercise talaga to. Tapos sineryoso lang namin, ginawa namin siyang legit thesis talaga na with our own data sets, with our own samples, with our own analysis na ginawa namin. Rather than dun sa kinompile for the exercise na pinagawa sa students. So, sineryoso namin siya. At ginawa namin siyang master's thesis.
Nice. Tapos kanina, yung sabi mo, for this study, yung tiningnan nyo ay yung primitive lava galing sa monogenetic center. Anong ibig sabihin ng monogenetic center?
Okay, good question. So, may different types of volcanoes tayo. Like, for example, we have monogenetic and polygenetic volcano. So, pag sinabing polygenetic volcanoes, ito yung mga vulkan na nagka-undergo ng series of eruptions. So, madaming beses na nag-erupt throughout their lifetime. Kasi mas robust yung supply ng magma sa ilalim. At the same time, nagmamigrate din nagkakaroon sila ng multiple vents kung saan dumadaan mismo yung magma pag nag-erupt sila. And of course, nag-undergo sila ng series of construction and destruction phases kasi medyo violent din yung napoproduce pag polygenetic volcanoes ka, especially pag sa arc setting like the Philippines. Pag monogenetic naman, mono means isang beses lang throughout their lifetime. At the same time, mas maikli lang yung lifetime ng mga monogenetic volcanoes compared sa polygenetic volcanoes. So yung polygenetic volcanoes, pwede silang mag-range ng millions of years. So from that time na na-form sila until millions of years pass, active pa rin sila. Pag monogenetic, siguro nasa mga tens to hundreds or maybe 1,000 lang siguro na years yung lifespan ng monogenetic volcanoes. In terms of magma, mas madaming primitive magma sa monogenetic kasi medyo straightforward yung magma plumbing system. So pag sinabing magma plumbing system, ito yung may mga different domains tayo or mga elements or mga components na nag-interact dito sa system na to. Salin dito yung magma, which is composed of yung melt, you have crystals, with or without dissolved gases. And meron din tayong yung wall rock mismo, kasala din yun. So, itong magma plumbing system ng monogenetic ay medyo straightforward lang. So, may isang magma chamber lang sila at specific depth. And then, nag-erupt lang talaga siya hanggang nag-empty yung magma chamber. Or, if hindi na-empty yung magma chamber, pag nag-erupt, tumitigas lang siya doon kasi walang nagbibigay ng excess pressure sa ilalim or walang nagsusupply or nagre-resupply ng magma sa ilalim. Compared sa polygenetic volcanoes, medyo complex yung magma plumbing system nila kasi dumadaan sila sa birth, climax, saka sa terminal stages ng volcanism. So, during those times, madaming magma chambers yung nako-construct sa different levels ng crust. Kung kaya mas madaming types of eruption or different eruption styles yung na-observe pag mga large or violent na explosive volcanism compared sa mga monogenetic. So again, mono, once lang nag-erupt. Poly, many times nag-erupt. mas older yung poly. Yung mono ay medyo mga bata-bata lang sila in terms of volcanic history. At the same time, yung magma plumbing system ng monogenetic volcanoes ay very straightforward, whereas yung polygenetic ay medyo complex.
Okay. Sige, recap ko kung tama yung pagkaintindi ko so far nung nung mga explanation mo. So bale, inaral nyo yung magma storage doon sa Macolod Corridor through yung primitive lava na na-erupt nitong mga monogenetic volcano. Tama ba?
Correct.
So how do you actually study yung ganito based dun sa rocks na nasa surface? Yung melting mo, yung magma, yung melting ng mga bato, yung mga magma, nandun sila kilometers or tens of kilometers below the Earth's surface.
Good question though. So, una sa lahat, field work. Kailangan natin alamin kung anong itsura nila sa field. Kasi yung pinaka-utmost na evidence pa rin sa lahat is yung kung anong nasa field. Especially if accessible naman siya. So, kailangan puntahan. We need to understand kung anong itsura nila sa field, anong characteristic ng mga bato sa field. Second would be under the microscope, where we call it as petrographic analysis. So, itong bato na to, hinahati natin siya, ginagawang slab hanggang sa numipis at dinidikit sa slide. So, pag inaaral natin siya under the polarizing microscope, malalaman natin kung ano yung mga crystals na nakapaloob dito sa bato na to. So, yung iba-ibang crystals na yan, may iba-ibang elements. So, like I said earlier, since inaaral natin yung mga primitive lavas sa Macolod Corridor, mas madami talaga yung mga crystals na mataas yung iron tsaka magnesium. So, ito yung mga olivines tsaka clinopyroxenes. So, ito mismong mga elements na to ay nag-record siya mismo kung saan o kung gaano kalalim yung origin nila. At the same time, yung chemistry mismo ng mga crystals na to. So, pag gumagawa tayo ng geochemical analysis or laboratory analysis, mas nalalaman natin kung ano yung chemistry or geochemistry mismo ng mga bato na to. At pag nalaman natin kung anong certain element yung mataas or kung mababa, mas makakaisip tayo kung saan nanggagaling itong mga batong to. Kung saan sila nanggagaling, kung gaano kalalim din sila nabubuo dun sa ilalim ng lupa natin. So, sa case namin, inaaral namin yung mga crystals kasi parang they serve as like, messengers from greater depths, mga inaccessible na mga greater depths. At nire-record nila kung ano yung nangyayari nung time na nabuo yung bato hanggang sa nag-erupt sila. So, madaming evidences na pwedeng ma-record mismo within that crystal itself. And also, gumagawa kami ng numerical modeling and also calculations from our data para ma-estimate natin yung in quantity yung parang kung gaano kalalim sila nabubuo. Like, I'm talking about kilometers. Okay? So, ayan. Ganon natin inaaral yung bato. So, from field, punta tayo sa lab, and then we do some calculations, and then we try to interpret our data, and then make a story from it.
Ayun. So dito, ano yung nakita niyo dun sa Macolod Corridor?
Interesting, kasi
Can you walk us through dun sa results?
yeah. Yung result namin, sobrang daming olivine. Hindi namin inakala na yung composition ng mga primitive magmas ay parang na siya, malapit na siya dun sa pinaka na melt na nabuo during partial melting. Dun based sa calculation at saka sa estimation namin. So, itong mga primitive magmas based sa study namin ay nabuo sila doon sa may upper mantle. So itong upper mantle, ito mismo yung important na region para makapagbuo ka ng mga magma. So nagpa-pond lang sila pala doon sa ilalim ng Macolod Corridor. It means na andun lang sila the entire time, like nasa ilalim lang. Kunyari, ito yung crust mo, and then ito yung mantle mo, ito yung surface. Andito lang sila sa ilalim ng mantle. Kumbaga nasa boundary ng crust tsaka mantle lang sila. Nagpa-pond lang, parang stagnant lang sila doon. So pag may bagong batches na naman na melt na nanggagaling sa mas ilalim na portion, yung part ng mga nagpapand dito na magma ay inaakyat niya yung portion dun sa crust or sa lupa para makapag-induce ng trigger dun sa resident na magma. So pag consistently na nangyayari yon, kung may mga consistent ka na ascent ng mga melt sa ilalim ng lupa, sa ilalim dun sa mantle papunta dun sa crust or sa lupa, it means nakapagbuo siya ng excess pressure hanggang sa mag-erupt yung vulkan. So yung nakita namin sa Macolod Corridor, masyadong malalim yung origin ng mga primitive magmas, like around 36 to 42 kilometers deep. So yung thickness ng crust mismo sa Macolod Corridor based sa geophysical data mismo ay nasa mga 32 kilometers. So yung kakapal yung crust o yung lupa sa may Macolod Corridor. And then, yung estimate namin based sa data namin, itong mga primitive magmas ay nasa 36 to 42 kilometers deeper pa dun sa crustal thickness mismo ng area. So, ma-imagine natin na nasa upper mantle talaga sila. That explains why they are really primitive in composition. Mataas talaga yung iron magnesium content nila.
Nice. Interesting. Tapos ngayon, ginagawa mo yung the same method na yan throughout Southeast Asia.
Yes, pero hindi lang sa primitive. Nag-explore, parang magma lang din ako. Nag-evolve na rin ako sa different different composition. So yung sa master's ko, primitive. Sa PhD ko naman ay silicic systems na. So yung mga caldera eruption mismo. So ito na yung mga papasok yung mga super explosive na volcanism. So, isa dito yung meron sa Indonesia, sa may Sumatra Island. Medyo malakas yung mga eruptions ng mga volcanoes dyan. Like, we're talking about VEI more than 6 yung eruptions. So, sobrang lakas. Then we also have one in Northeast China, which is the Changbaishan volcano, which is very unique type of volcano. So, ayan, tinatry din namin i-decode kung anong condition meron dun sa magma chamber nila. Kasi medyo poorly understood pa tong dalawang lugar na to, including also the Philippines, like the Taal volcano, kung anong meron dun sa magma chambers nila. And we try to also correlate kung parehas ba sila ng pinapakitang signature based sa crystals or hindi. Parang ganun.
Ang interesting din talaga ng nung Macolod Corridor kasi nga ayun nabanggit mo nga yung mga magma na yun, tapos 'di ba lugar din to ng geothermal energy sa Pilipinas. Tama ba?
Meron dyan, I think may Ibarara. Sorry if allowed ba akong mag sabi niya. Pero yeah, meron dyang active geothermal power plant sa may Mount Makiling.
Speaking of geothermal pala, may previous episode din kami on geothermal energy. Pero sa Negros yung site. So check nyo yung kay Dr. Lorraine Primalion. Nakalimutan ko na nung episode number. Hanapin nyo na lang.
Nice.
Yung yung pag-aaral mo naman dun sa Indonesia and China. Paano ka naman napunta sa ganong study sites? Can you share din yung journey mo from MS to PhD? Paano nag-open up yung ganong opportunity?
Yeah, so long story short, napunta ako sa Hong Kong, nag-pursue ako ng PhD kasi na-meet ko yung advisor ko ngayon, o supervisor sa PhD supervisor ko sa isang conference in 2023 sa Singapore. So it's AOGS. So siya yung session convener nung time na yon, and she got interested sa study ko na ginagawa sa Macolod Corridor, and she told me na up to apply doon sa lab niya dito sa Hong Kong. And then I applied.
Nice.
And eventually nakapasa ako, and then I got accepted, and then officially I officially started my MPhil PhD journey dito sa Hong Kong, sa University of Hong Kong this January 1st of this year. So, yung PhD thesis ko talaga ay centered upon dun sa magma plumbing system ng Taal Volcano kasi wala pang masyadong constraint mismo kung anong eksakto yung architecture ng magma chamber or magma plumbing system ng Taal. Tapos, along the way, may mga projects akong ginagawa. So, I have at least 2 or 3 ongoing projects. So, ito yung isang caldera volcano sa Indonesia, which is si Ranao Volcano. Ito din yung kasama din to si Changbaishan Volcano. So itong si Changbaishan Volcano sa China naman, ginagamit namin yung apatites na crystal. So that iba siya doon sa primitive na magma kasi wala namang apatites pag medyo basaltic yung or mafic yung composition. So pag medyo silicic yung system, mas madaming silica, mas violent yung eruption, mas mataas yung chance na nakakapagbuo ka ng mga apatites. Ito yung mas maliliit pa to ng mga crystals na na-form sa magma chamber. So ginagamit namin to para marker kung gaano kalakas yung magiging future eruption ng mga bulkan. So kumbaga, tinitrace namin yung compositions ng apatite crystals. And tinatry namin siyang ginagawa ng model kung gaano kalakas yung magiging eruption ng bulkan na to in the future. So medyo medyo heavy thermodynamic modeling, and also apart from that, nagka-calculate kami ng ascent, yung pag-akyat ng magma mismo, yung time scales ng eruption. So, nung pagbuo dun sa magma chamber hanggang sa pag-akyat dun sa conduit hanggang sa nag-erupt siya, kina-calculate namin mismo yung kung gaano ka-bilis o kabagal yung pag-travel. And with all these results or with all these data that we're working on, we will also try to relay it to the public. Ano yung importance mismo nito in terms of volcanic hazards na ipopost ng mga volcanoes na to, and how we can also contribute this scientific data to the layman's in terms of community preparedness. So medyo siya. It's a long way to go, but hopefully medyo successful yung ending or story ng ginagawa.
Ayun, so kung naging interested kayo sa study ni Mike, please check na lang yung link sa description. So ayun, nakalink naman yung papers as always sa description. So ngayon, kwentuhan mo naman kami ng more on behind the scenes ng study. Paano na-fund yung study na to? Magkano yung pera na kinailangan to do this at saan siya ginagasto?
So, nung pumasok ako as DOST scholar kasi dun sa masters ko sa UP Diliman. So, we have like, I think we only have 2 years para ma-accomplish yung contract. So, within those 2 years, dapat makapag-produce ka ng data. At the same time, you're also privileged to be given yung mga funding along the way. But realistically speaking, hindi feasible yung 2 years kasi pumasok ako sa pandemic eh. So, there was a time na limited yung mobility ko, which also means na hindi kami makapag-field nung time na yon. So, medyo na-delay yung field planning tsaka field sampling namin. Kasi yun nga, madaming tayo sa nag-lockdown, mga permits pa, and so on and so forth. Pero the good thing about it is that the Department of Science and Technology, tsaka yung ASTH RDP, and also yung in-house na grant ng advisor ko, who is Dr. Bichay Dapayat dun sa NIGS. So we tried to pull this the funding that I got from the ASTH RDP and also from HERS, and then dinelegate namin siya kung aling aspect dito sa research namin siya pwedeng ilabas. So for example, sa field, medyo magasa talaga. Depende din kasi kung ilang araw kayo sa field. Yung transportation pa, that also covers transportation, yung meals. At the same time, and also your accommodation. Apart from that is yung further geochemical analysis na. So, sinisend namin usually sa third-party lab or laboratory yung mga samples namin na dinudurog sa lab. And then, that's when the time that we get the raw data from these third laboratory. And then we process them, we calculate them, and also make our own interpretations and also diagrams out from these data. So, normally, pag nasa master's or nasa graduate studies ka, for example, sa UP NIGS, at nasa petrology, nag-range siya from 150 to 200,000 pesos yung ginagasto pag for the master's thesis alone. So ayun, malaking tulong yung scholarship mismo kasi mas napabilis yung pag-process ko ng mga data itself. Kung hindi ako scholar nung time na yun, maybe it would be like really a burden for me. Kung paano i-hurdle yung research kasi of course yung bread and butter ng research natin is yung data na kukuha natin from the field itself. So yeah, malaking bagay yung funding ng DOST, HRDP, and also the UP NIGS itself. So, yeah.
Kapag nag-field ka, ano yung nangyayari? Ilang araw, tapos paano mo hinahanap yung mga samples mo?
So usually, nag-literature review tayo pag nag-field. So tinatry natin basahin yung mga previous na papers sa area na yon kung saan sila nakakuha ng mga samples. We try to check the maps as well if accessible ba sila bago tayo sumabak dun sa fieldwork. And if gusto pa nating mag-explore, we also want to check other places dun sa mga hindi pa na-report na area na potentially may ganong klaseng bato din na makikita. So yun, basically, it requires an intensive na field planning. So kailangan prepared tayo dyan before pupunta sa fieldwork. And then, kasi nung time namin, since pandemic siya, November 2021, if I'm not mistaken, I think medyo lax na yung lockdown. So, mas mabilis na yung pag-access. At the same time kasi may ibang parts ng bulkan na exposed na siya sa along the road. So, mas mabilis na yung pagkuha ng samples mismo. May ibang bulkan na medyo risky din. So, yung sa last day of fieldwork namin, so umakyat kami sa isang bundok, tapos nasa cliff kami. Naghahawak kamay kami doon kasi yun na yung pinaka malaking bato na pwede namin makuha. Pero worth it yung experience na yun. So depende siya sa accessibility. So accessibility wise, kailangan i-check siya prior. Kung masyadong delikado, basically, wag natin i-compromise or i-sacrifice yung buhay natin just to get the sample. But anyway, masaya siya. Actually. So yeah.
So
Usually,
yung bato, hindi lang pala siya, yung mapupulot mo lang sa kalsada, kailangan tibagin mo talaga.
Kailangan, sabi nga nila, no pain, no gain. So kung hindi ka dadaan sa mga putik-putikan na yun, wala akong makukuhang magandang bato. Otherwise, hindi magiging maganda yung story or magiging magandang kwento ng research mo. Maganda kasi nakita mo siya sa field, kung ano itsura nila sa field, rather than just grabbing those along the way dun sa may surface. At the same time, pag nag-field work kami, usually mga 1 week lang siya natapos. Kasi also, we're also busy with other types of things then. So we want to condense the field campaigns to siguro 1 week lang for research purposes. Pero if it's a class requirement, usually 2 weeks yung field work. Yeah. All worth it. Everything is worth it.
always ko 'to sinasabi sa podcast. Ito yung maganda sa mga kurso na heavy sa fieldwork kasi nakakapunta ka sa iba't ibang lugar tapos most of the time libre kasi bayad nung project. So,
So,
nakakapasyal ka na.
tama, 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 tama. Tamang mindset yun po. Tama, tama. Kaya mag-geology na kayo. Mag-geology.
Oo.
Puso ka ng geology. Punta kayo sa iba-ibang lugar.
Nung ginawa mo yung study, pandemic. So in addition with that, ano pa yung mga mako-consider mo na challenges and mga memorable experiences, both good and bad?
Actually, aside sa pandemic is yung machine na gagamitin mo. For example, yung may certain equipment ka na gagamitin para sa analysis, which would give a really important data dun sa gagawin mong analysis. Kasi, syempre, machine lang naman siya. So, may times din na nagiging cranky yung mga machine. So, hindi natin siya may expect na gagana siya at that time. So, may mga downtime din na kailangan mong hintayin ng ilang months bago ma-fix. So, in my case, I started my MS March 2021, and then we had field planning from June all the way to I think August, then October na naman. Then before that, nung nag-relax na yung pandemic, November kami nakapag-field work. So nung time na yon, okay na, may field data na kami. Pero pagbalik namin galing sa field, yung machine na naman yung problema namin. Kasi yung machine, naging cranky siya. So, one semester, hindi namin siya nagamit. If I'm not mistaken, 5 months or 6 months mismo. So, may downtime din siya. May malaking lag time siya dun sa pagiging progress mo. Kasi syempre, you're only required to utilize the fund within the 2 years and also within the 1 year extension. So, medyo, disheartening sa part namin kasi syempre, wala kami magawa nung time na yun. Kailangan maghintay lang talaga. So what we did was maybe nag-prepare lang kami ng diagrams namin, and then by the time na may sariling data na kami at okay na yung machine, input na lang doon para at least mas mabilis na lang mismo yung pag-interpret ng mga data namin. So ayun, isa siya sa mga malaking challenge na pwedeng ma-experience. Hindi siya human induced na type of challenge. So, pwede ding laboratory setup din, or yung mga ganong klaseng downtime or mga problems ay pwede mo rin siyang ma-encounter along the way kung nag-research ka.
Ayun. So, nabanggit mo yung yung hanggang sa naging sufficient yung data nyo para maka-come up ng story. Paano nyo nasabi yan na sufficient na yung data, submit na natin to for publication?
Interesting question to. Well, kasi depende din yun depende sa journal kung saan kayo magpapublish. Pero syempre, if web index ng mga journals or mga ISI ng mga publishing journals, kailangan robust yung data eh. So, and also unique yung data. So, kung at some specific analysis, medyo limited lang kayo sa data kasi financially constrained kayo, babawiin nyo siya or hatakin nyo siya sa isang klaseng analysis pa or sa isang additional analysis pa. And then, dun nyo dadamihan para mas maganda mas makikita mo mismo yung significance ng results. Kasi if you only have like very, very less data sets, for example, like siguro mga 2 or 3 samples lang at very limited lang yung ginagawa mong analysis, mahirap siya gawan ng kwento in our aspect because wala kang makikitang variability dun sa stretch ng samples mo mismo, or walang compositional variability na makikita. So in our case, what we did was, since financially limited lang din yung budget na meron kami as graduate scholars ng DOST, AST, HRDP. So sa isang analysis, hindi kami nakapagpadala ng mas madaming samples, pero binawi namin siya dun sa in-house na analysis na ginawa namin sa NIGS. So, dinamihan namin siya para at least siya yung magre-reinforce mismo dun sa gap na dun sa may sampling density na meron kami. So, siguro sa case namin, maybe for a specific geochemical analysis, for example, like electron probe microanalysis or APMA, siguro 100 data or 100 spots, or I think those are already enough. Kasi I think mas madami ka na makikitang mas magandang variation na yung makikita mo dun sa data mo compared dun sa pinaka-limited. So, ayan. Dun namin siya binawi. So, medyo depende din talaga siya kasi may ibang journals din na nag-require pa ng mas madami. But since we try to explain na graduate study lang naman ito, so at the same time, as long as nasagot mo yung objectives at na-bridge mo yung gap or yung research problem na gusto mo sagutin, then I think that's already enough to make one good research.
Kamusta naman yung yung naging review process mo? Hindi naman masyadong harsh yung mga reviewers.
Ooh, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say it here online. Pero may isa from Jamstack na nag-review ng paper ko.
Okay.
So basically, ako din nag-suggest na review siya. Siya yung nag-introduce ng isang specific calculation dun sa paper namin na ginawa. So siya mismo yung nag-develop ng ganong klaseng calculation. So mas kinailangan namin yung input niya kasi syempre siya yung mas nakakaalam. So medyo madugo yung review process. Although for yung reviewers na sinuggest ko, 2 lang yung nag-respond. So isa yung positive.
Ilang months yung yung inabot?
So we submitted our paper, I think last year, that was in May, yeah. Yung first review, pumasok no July before our graduation sa UP. July 15, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So medyo maduguan kasi sobrang daming questions nitong si reviewer 2 itong nasa Jamstack. Kasi siya naman talaga siya naman talaga yung nagpasimulo ng nag-develop ng calculation na yon. Then that was actually one extensive month of review process, and then extend kami ng another 2 weeks. So that was 6 months for the first round of review. So binalik namin yung paper noong August, and then after a week, we also heard again from the editor mismo ng journal na kailangan pang i-review ulit yung paper. So nung time na yon, mas pinaikli na siya. Tatuwa naman yung mga reviewers, both were positive dun sa ginawa naming kung paano namin reinforce yung scientific data namin, kung paano namin i-address yung mga comments nila, yung suggestions, which are also really vital kasi kailangan mo talagang i-sell sa kanila yung data mo. Anong unique, kung bakit siya ipapublish, bakit, why is this and that. So after that 2 weeks, pinasa namin siya, binigay namin siya sa editor. And then I think after 2 or 3 weeks, naka-receive kami ng notification. I think it was in September, last week September, na accepted na yung paper hanggang sa naging available siya last year in October. I think that was on October 10, 2024. So yung review process, I think started from, so yung submission to review to publication ay umabot lang ng June, July, August, medyo more or less 5 months. 5 months lang. Medyo mabilis siya.
Okay na rin, no? Parang average rate na rin yung mga ganun, no?
Yeah, average rate na rin. Kasi nakala namin baka rejected yung paper kasi yung data nga, yung number of data sets, medyo nakulangan. So, buti naman na understanding yung mga reviewers mismo. Mabait naman sila. So, ayan, hanggang sa na-publish siya. Wala na ng tinik. And then, yeah, okay na. Pwede na magpahinga.
And I think kailangan natin mag-wrap up na. May get 1 hour na rin tayo. So before we let you go, Mike, ano yung ma-advise mo sa aspiring researchers?
Oo. Siguro, have some motivation. Importante yan sa mga researchers or sa mga early career researchers like us. You should you should try to know or maybe determine kung ano yung motivation mo, kung bakit ka nag-research. And along the way, ma-realize mo na masaya palang mag-research. And then, maybe also, if you want to dream something or if you want to achieve something, you also have to work for it. Dreaming is the best when you work for it. So, ayan, medyo it will be a long way to go siguro. Mahirap siya sa umpisa, but there's nothing difficult in the first place kasi it's just our first time. So once we develop that skill set, that research skill set, for example, mas madali na lang siya until the finish line. So keep moving forward, always stay motivated, and if you need something or if you need some help, ask your supervisor always or your colleagues.
Ayun. So, and lastly, do you have anything to promote?
Ano ba ipopromote? Wala naman specifically. Siguro lang, we should also do good science, and also try to, hindi lang quality yung minimaintain, but also the integrity of our output. So, yan lang. Do good science and please, this is also one important thing. Pag may mga advisory coming from the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, although I'm not affiliated to PHIVOLCS, please wag tayong mag-spread ng fake news o gumagawa-gawa ng kwento. So we should also try to minimize, spreading fake news in times of disasters. So that's one way to know lang kung totoo ba sinasabi natin, and that's also checking directly sa mga post ng accredited na mga agencies natin na namamahala sa disasters sa Philippines. So, yeah.
Yun, yes. I-echo ko lang din yung sinabi ni Mike. Kapag may eruption na nangyayari, kapag may earthquake, lagi dapat yung tinitingnan nyo yung lumalabas na announcement from PHIVOLCS. Huwag kayong maniwala sa ibang mga sa ibang mga page. Huwag kayong magpakalat ng kung ano-ano. Kasi binibigyan nyo pa ng dagdag na problema yung PHIVOLCS.
Exactly. Tama yan po.
And actually may mga naging guest na rin kami dito from PHIVOLCS. Nakalimutan ko lang anong episode number. So sina Sir Deo Llamas and Sir Jeffrey Perez. Hanapin nyo lang sa listahan ng episodes. So yung diniscuss ni Sir Deo ay yung stress transfer during the anong year nga ba yun? 2022 or 2023 na mga Philippine Trench earthquakes. Nakalimutan ko anong year. Tapos yung kay Sir Jeffrey Perez naman, yung paghahanap ng mga prehistoric na movements ng Philippine fault sa Surigao area. Using yung technique na paleoseismic trenching. So ayun, hanapin nyo lang sa episode list namin. And ayun, I guess hanggang dito na lang muna tayo. Maraming salamat Mike sa pagpapa-unlock ng aming invitation.
Thank you din, Paul, sa pag-invite sa akin. I really do appreciate this opportunity. Thank you. Hope to see you again. Sana makapunta ko ng Japan next year, hopefully.
Kung mag-meet tayo sa kung saang mga conference.
Sa conference yan, exactly.
Makikita din tayo ulit.
Tama.
Salamat din sa lahat ng nakinig at nanood. See you everyone next week. Madami pa tayong pag-uusapan na research na ginagawa ng ating mga Pinoy scientists. At kung nag-enjoy kayo sa episode na to, please don't forget to like and subscribe at share nyo na rin sa mga kakilala nyo.